I'm delighted to welcome you all to the 76th round of Climate Talks titled Diversifying Energy Mixes, the Potential of Green Hydrogen. Thank you for joining, and thanks for our highly distinguished speakers. We're lucky to have you today. One more announcement before we start. You can use the chat box below to leave any comments to the audience, but please use the Q&A function to ask any question during the event. We would have some time at the end of the event to hopefully answer some of your questions. So please make sure you submit your questions at least 15 minutes before the event comes to an end. The event's duration is 90 minutes. Well, I'm honored to be your moderator for today. My name is Omar Ibrahim. I'm an energy engineer. I feel a bit extra lucky to have had both exposures of both countries, just like this Egyptian-German platform. I've earned my master's in energy engineering from Germany and my bachelor's in energy and renewable energy engineering from Egypt and prior. So I had the chance to deal with several energy and renewable energy systems in both Egypt and Germany. By time, I developed interest in alternative advanced clean fuels, where I decided to dive deeper with this. I'm currently based in Ireland as a PhD research fellow at University College Cork. My PhD focuses on coupling floating offshore wind with green hydrogen production and transportation, from system design, techno-economics, as well as policymaking perspectives, which all bring us to today's topic. For those of you joining us for the first time, Cairo Climate Talks, or CCT in short, is an initiative that aims to connect people working on solving climate emergencies and responding to climate change effects, as well as raise awareness and support public dialogue and engage different stakeholders in several areas. CCT is a cooperation between the German embassy in Cairo and the Egyptian Ministry of Environment, in close cooperation with our stakeholders from the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency, Egyptian-German Joint Committee for Renewable Energy, Energy Efficiency and Environmental Protection, or JCEE in short, initiative of GIZ, as well as the DAAD, known as DAD in Egypt. So one more reminder, please switch to the German channel for Arabic translation by clicking on the globe button at the bottom of your screen. Okay, perfect. So before I introduce you to today's topic, I would like to invite Ms. Stephanie to open the event on behalf of the German embassy. Ms. Stephanie is the Deputy Head of German Development Cooperation at the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany. Ms. Stephanie, over to you now.
Thank you very much, Omar, for the kind introduction, and thank you to the panelists and the audience for taking the time for tonight's Cairo Climate Talks. I'm very happy to be here with you tonight on Zoom. It's the 76th edition of the Cairo Climate Talks. For me, it's actually maybe the 5th or the 6th time I'm attending, but I know it's been around for roughly 10 years. And during this time, the CCT has become an important forum for exchanges between Germany and Egypt on the topic of climate change. And as Omar said, I'm coming from a development cooperation perspective. So my most important goal is actually to build bridges between countries in order to tackle the big challenges of mankind. And climate change, with no doubt, is one of them. We can witness the effects of it both in Egypt, when you look, for example, at desertification, but also in Germany, where you see more and more extreme weather events. And for tackling these issues, we have universal goals and agreements such as the Paris Climate Agreement and the 2030 Agenda. Those help us address the issues locally, globally, and regionally. I'm glad to be part of tonight's CCT, in which we can shed light on a fascinating and innovative topic that will influence the discussion on climate change for the upcoming years and maybe even decades: green hydrogen. Some of you may know that global energy consumption is set to grow by 50% by the year of 2050. In developing countries and emerging economies, it's even more. It's supposed to be 70%. This means that green hydrogen is essential to successful energy transition and to achieving international climate goals. It can be used, among other things, to produce climate-neutral fuels or to store energy. That makes green hydrogen a key commodity in successful energy transition. The German Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development, who's actually my boss, Gerd Müller, said, green hydrogen can become the clean oil of tomorrow. It can make a crucial contribution towards reducing the carbon emissions of industries where electrification would be very difficult, for instance, in aviation or marine transport. The technology can also be applied in other emission-intensive areas like the steel or the chemical industries. In order to seize this opportunity for industry and put Germany at the vanguard of green hydrogen, the German government has published a national hydrogen strategy and a corresponding action plan. The purpose of the strategy is to foster the production of affordable, climate-neutral hydrogen and to make Germany a global provider of state-of-the-art hydrogen technology. Pilot projects for the production of green hydrogen are planned to be implemented in our partner countries. Looking at Germany and Egypt, we have been working together in the energy sector for more than 25 years, and we have an ongoing portfolio of approximately 500 million euro. Many prestigious renewable energy projects, such as the wind park in Gulf of Suez, the Aswan High Dam, and the solar park in Zafarana, have profited from this cooperation. Germany is also co-chairing the Development Partners Group on Energy and Environment, and energy plays a big role in the Team Europe approach. One of our panelists of tonight, Martin Neusel, is both our sector coordinator as well as the head of the Joint Committee for Energy Efficiency, which is essentially a German-Egyptian joint project in this field. And he's a great expert as well, so I'm looking forward to his input. Just looking at Egypt, you don't have to be an expert to see the enormous potential of renewable energy. As for green hydrogen, we see the potential, but still we are in a very initial phase with loads of question marks and quite a bit of research that still needs to be done to ensure that green hydrogen is really green, sustainable, and delivers to its goals. And we also see that there is tremendous interest in the topic in Egypt. Both from the government, Egypt is planning to integrate green hydrogen in its 2035 energy strategy, as well as from the business world. Companies, not only from Germany, see it as a big business opportunity. I'm sure we will learn about that tonight as well. So I'm very much looking forward to new perspectives and a vibrant discussion. Thank you very much and enjoy the evening.
Thank you, Ms. Stephanie, for having us all today, and thanks for the nice opening remarks. I would also like to invite Dr. Ahlam Farouk to also open the event on behalf of the Egyptian Ministry of Environment. Dr. Ahlam is advisor and head of Central Department for Energy and Enhancing the Industrial Environment. Dr. Ahlam, the floor is yours now.
Okay. Thanks, Mrs. Stephanie Sorensen. Thank you, Dr. Omar Saleh. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. At the beginning, I would like to thank the Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany and the organizer of this event for inviting me to attend. I attend on behalf of Dr. Yasmin Fouad, the Egyptian Minister of Environment. I would like to welcome you all to discuss the activities of the 76th Cairo Climate Change Talks entitled The Energy Mix and the Possibilities of Green Hydrogen. Energy derived from green hydrogen is considered a new revolution in the field of new and renewable energy, which aim to implement sustainable development 2030 because of its wonderful effect on the health and environment. Hydrogen is a promising energy source for commercial use, which is produced using electricity generated from renewable energy sources. Thus, it is free of carbon emissions and is the best choice for the environment. The abundance of these elements and the ability to produce it from water through electrolysis makes it is an attractive and cleaner option that would replace fossil fuels, which solve this problem and tackle challenges of removing carbon emission from the areas of transportation, as well as in the field of industry, which has a very important role as a substance that contributes to the removal of carbon emissions in industry that generate high amount of them, such as the steel, cement, and chemical sectors. Also, this field is still new in the world, and therefore it is new in Egypt, and the Egyptian market is still at the beginning of using this source within the clean energy mix. The Egyptian climate is also considered a fertile medium for the use of a new and renewable energy, such as solar energy, wind, and others. Therefore, starting to use energy derived from green hydrogen is easily available. Today, I hope to hear more details about green hydrogen and what are the scientific mechanisms to start applying it in Egyptian market from specialized experts who are with us today. Thanks you again for your presence. And now I will pass the word on to colleagues to complete the activities of this event. Best regards. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahsan, for having us all today, and thanks for the nice opening remarks. Well, I think it's time to introduce you to the topic and set the scene for our panel discussion later. Well, I believe the extraordinary climate Egypt is having at those days is a perfect real-time introduction. Climate change. Not even Egypt, I think Germany as well. The climate emergency is real. 2020 was the joint warmest year on record. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere continues to grow. Sea levels are rising at the same time as the world's oceans continue to heat up. It's becoming a matter of survival rather than a better future or so. During 2020, many countries and regions pledged for carbon neutrality by mid-century. The only way to reach the targets set forth in the Paris Agreement is by turning pledges into action now. Governments, businesses, and institutions will meet in Glasgow this November for the COP26 conference to discuss progress made so far and how best to achieve the next phase of carbon reduction. Where possible, electrification based on renewables is the most cost-effective and most efficient option for decarbonization. However, there are some sectors that have power needs which cannot be met by electrification. Industry and transportation make up 35% of global greenhouse gas emissions, which is where we find the hard to electrify end uses. Iron and steel, cement, chemical production, along with heavy transportation, such as shipping, aviation, and heavy-duty trucks, are all significant CO2 emitting activities, which are hard or completely impossible to electrify. Transitioning these sectors to zero carbon needs fresh thinking, because without addressing these hard to electrify sectors, the climate will continue to warm. Green hydrogen, which is basically hydrogen produced by electrolysis powered by a renewable energy source, is a key block for reducing the emissions from these high CO2 emitting industries. Major efforts are ongoing at the moment globally to deploy this clean energy carrier as soon as possible. We will discuss as much as the time allows with our excellent speakers the potential and challenges of this innovative clean energy carrier in Germany, Egypt, and beyond. We have an outstanding panel of 4 outstanding speakers from both Egypt and Germany, working on green hydrogen from 4 different perspectives. Bringing them all together today was an awesome opportunity. We wholeheartedly thank them for making it today. Let me introduce them to you now. Well, in the beginning, I would like to introduce Dr. Catherine Gold-Emma. Dr. Catherine is an expert in energy technology and management and has many years of experience in the energy sector, energy policy, and policy advice. She's been managing director of Rainer Limoni Institute since February 2016 and is responsible for scientific and financial management. Dr. Gazdama holds a diploma in electrical engineering from TU Berlin and received her PhD in physics from Humboldt-Universität zu Berlin in 2007. She's a former member of the board of directors and current regional manager of hydrogen power storage and solutions East Germany, known as HYPOS, and was a founding member of the Women in Green Hydrogen Network in 2020. Thank you, Catherine, for joining us today. Mr. Andreas Beckers, as the second speaker for today, is the country CEO and executive board member for ThyssenKrupp Industrial Solutions in Egypt, effective February 2021. His career with UDE in 1995, chemical plant engineering entity within the ThyssenKrupp, and has held a number of managerial functions during his 26 years at ThyssenKrupp, such as head of business development and opportunity management and corporate spokesman. Mr. Andreas studied chemical engineering at RWTH Aachen in Germany and graduated in 1994 as diploma engineer. Thank you, Mr. Beckers, for making it here today. Our third speaker, Dr. Nahla Ismail from Egypt. Dr. Nahla is a professor in nanotechnology and renewable energy materials at the National Research Center. She worked on hydrogen storage at the EU project known as Tokasia, part of the 5th Framework Energy Program at TU Darmstadt, and as a principal investigator in 5 international scientific grants. She received her PhD in materials science and engineering from Technical University of Dresden. Dr. Ismail was awarded the Best Young Chemist in Arab World in 2011 from the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing Countries, and earned Master of Khair Awards for Best Publication in 2010 and 2011. She also supervised several master's and PhD students. Delighted to have you today, Dr. Nahla. Our fourth and last speaker for today is Mr. Martin Neufel. Mr. Martin is currently the head of projects for the DIZ project, the Egyptian-German Joint Committee on Renewable Energy, Energy Efficiency and Environmental Protection, and co-chair of the Development Partners Group Energy and Environment. He has previously been an advisor to, for example, the EU, the BMWI, BMU, and BMZ. Throughout the last years, he mostly focused on policy dialogue and knowledge management and low emission strategies in the MENA region, Diapol-CA and CE, and worked for the German energy agency known as DENA on energy efficiency and renewable energy within the German energy transition, and has a combined background in mechanical engineering with a special focus on renewable energy as well as in applied environmental sciences. Thank you, Mr. Neufel, for making it here today.
Thank you.
So I think it's time to start our panel discussion, and I would for sure like to start our discussion for today with an introduction in a more technical depth for the green hydrogen. What's green hydrogen? But let me start in the beginning with the German energy system and how this is going, as well as the energy transition known as Energiewende. And I would like to start this with Dr. Catherine. So can you please discuss with us how's the German energy system and how it's going now on the Energiewende, and then lead us through the green hydrogen in Germany from a technical perspective?
Yes, thank you. I would absolutely like to do that because I think it makes a lot of sense for everyone to be on the same grounds when it comes to understanding the energy system that we come from when we talk about the German energy system. And I'm an engineer, but don't worry. I would like to give you more of an overview of what is the policy system like and what are the transitions that we're going through and how do they lead us to green hydrogen. And one message that I'd like to get across is that the German energy system is transitioning on a very grand scale and on very many levels. And one level is that we are transitioning from a fossil-based and nuclear-based electricity system to a majorly renewable-based electricity system. And while we are doing this, there are more and more areas of energy and of energy use where we're seeing how decarbonizing them is very hard, using only renewable electricity. And this is how green hydrogen really comes in. And to be clear, green hydrogen is a term that we use to describe the kind of hydrogen that you can produce out of electricity and water, to phrase it very plainly. So what is the energy system like in Germany right now? You need to know that we are talking about a deregulated energy market, and Germany has started to deregulate markets in at the beginning of the 90s, actually. So as part of the EU integration and of coupling the German markets to other markets, we now have a fully deregulated system where I'm free to choose my supplier. If I produce electricity, I'm competing with other companies and other electricity generators. And electricity, as well as natural gas, is a heavily traded commodity. So at any point in time, you could enter this market as a new competitor. What we haven't deregulated because of common sense is the grids and the transport system. And they will be very interesting in the context of green hydrogen, because green hydrogen, when we think about a larger scale supply system, will probably make use of some of the infrastructure that we already have in Germany for natural gas. Because you need to know that energy in Germany is not only electricity, but we're also using a lot of natural gas, mostly for heating in the winter. So we have a system in place that could supply us with a, let's say, gas-based energy source. So what has Germany been doing over the last few years policy-wise? Well, in 2011, after the Fukushima incident, we have decided to phase out nuclear energy. And this is something that is happening as we speak. And the final phase out of nuclear power is going to be next year. It's going to be in 2022. So we're coming from a traditional system of hard coal, lignite, and nuclear power, and we're phasing out nuclear, and we have carbon climate goals, which will eventually lead to a phase out of the fossil fuels as well. And the fossil fuels, as I said, are hard coal and lignite. And what we've been doing at the same time was, over the last 20 years or so, we have heavily supported the rise of renewable energy in Germany. We started with a feed-in tariff system, which gave a lot of financial security, and we're changing the system now into an auction-based system. And the sheer number of renewable energy in the electricity system, when it comes to percentages, has now already reached 50%, which is the major number. It also came at a lot of cost and with a very strong policy behind it. And when you think of renewables in Germany, think mainly wind and solar PV, okay? So think wind farms all over the place, starting offshore wind farms in the Baltic and Northern Sea, and solar PV on rooftops, and solar PV on single areas around cities or in remote areas. And since Germany has very ambitious climate targets, we definitely need to talk about how to decarbonize the other sectors as well. So the electricity system is going well with renewables, but what about the German industry? What about the transport sector? And these will be some issues that we're going to talk about today, because this is where the German thinking goes when it comes to introducing green hydrogen. So the basic idea is, if we want to decarbonize the whole system, there is definitely going to be a point where green hydrogen comes in, and then Germany needs to think about whether this green hydrogen can be produced within the borders of Germany, or whether we're starting cooperations with other countries and thinking about a new exterior business or import business that could be set up between these countries.
Yeah, perfect. That's really great to have such an insight about the German energy system and how it's going there, and like this major percentage of renewables there. But why green hydrogen is booming in Germany, and like why Germany is keen on deploying green hydrogen that much?
Well, I think we've started to understand over the last few years that the electricity system isn't the only pillar of energy use that we have in this country. And we're really lacking ideas, for example, how to decarbonize the heavy industry that we still have, and that Germany is still keen on, let's say, at least securing as part of our economic portfolio. And green hydrogen is an attractive source of fuel because you see a lot of different industrial uses. You see a lot of industries interested in, getting into the game. I already mentioned the system that we already have in place. We have a large natural gas industry, which is interested in, supplying us with infrastructure, which is already there and could be used for hydrogen. And we have a transport sector that is looking into options for decarbonizing, for example, heavy duty transport and freight systems. And this is where most of the current hydrogen visionaries are looking at, I would say.
Perfect. Really interesting. So that was the German perspective about the green hydrogen and the energy transition we're having now. I think maybe it's time to discuss why green hydrogen in Egypt, or why is Egypt keen on green hydrogen? What do you think, Dr. Nahla? Dr. Nahla, can you hear us? I think you're on mute. Yeah,
no.
You're on mute now.
Yeah, thank you for this invitation. It's the first time to be invited to the CCT meetings. It's nice to meet everybody here. As for the question of why Egypt is keen for green hydrogen, well, actually, Egypt started earlier to be keen for renewable energy. Since 2016, Egypt joined the Paris Climate Agreement countries, and she has a great target announced by the government by 2035 that minimum 30% of the energy should be renewable. Hydrogen appears as a very important because hydrogen has, for example, fossil fuels. If you are going to change it to energy, so it's 30% change to energy by fossil fuels. But hydrogen can change 60% to energy. And hydrogen is one of the clean, very clean energy carrier. So if you combust hydrogen, like hydrogen with oxygen, so you get water as a byproduct. Of course, Egypt is taking serious steps to join the leagues of hydrogen, and the ministry has announced in very recent days so many projects. It appears that it's very attractive potential. It has very attractive potentials. If you look to Africa, so Egypt, first of all, is located nearby Europe. They have a friendly environment with European countries and a friendly environment for investments. And of course, the potentials of having the sun, the heat of the sun. So if the PVs in Egypt, of course, we expect more energy than, for example, in Germany or in the European countries for the hot weather. Also, we have the wind shore potentials. It's one of the untapped potentials which we expect in the future to have. So the study says that, for example, on the shore, the seashore, the Red Sea shore, that you have 20,000 megawatt of energy from the wind shore. So you can see Egypt become very attractive for many investments and huge investments. And Egypt looks serious in this field. The presence of Benban Park, solar park, and the serious steps taken for it makes many investments are looking for it. So green hydrogen, hydrogen is very, very important because it is a remote energy, so you can transport it. This is one of the benefits. Also, there is another benefit that Egypt will have and access to the market, to the EU market, and you have more demand than the other African countries. I think all of these points make it very promising to have an investment in Egypt for green hydrogen.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Like all the resources Egypt has, as well as all the collaboration potential between Egypt and the EU, as well as decarbonizing Egypt at the first place. So like a lot of reasons to go with the green hydrogen. So I think this takes us to a very good point with it, which is the collaboration that has been announced earlier in January in 2021 between Germany and Egypt. I think the best person to talk about this collaboration, or what it's all about, and like why this happened, is Mr. Beckers. Over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, well, this announcement in January, and I explained it already, was by our colleagues, the very esteemed company Siemens Energy. And I'm representing here, of course, another big German corporation called ThyssenKrupp. I think there is a lot of room, and I think I also said that competition is so important in this new technology because it drives innovation. So it is very important that we have this this competition. What I explained back then, a few weeks to the Prime Minister of Egypt, was that Egypt was already a pioneer. Currently, we see many economies around the world that are competing for this new field. Of course, many ambitions are there to enter into it. Australia is looking very much on exporting to Japan and Korea, North America, Western Europe, and I think with all the prerequisites that Egypt has, being a logistic hub, being resource rich in one of the best wind spots in the world, perfect solar prerequisites, and then also being adjacent to the European market and being at a line with the Suez Canal of reaching Asia and Europe, gives it an extreme perfect opportunity to start here. You know that we are currently also developing for this big project in Saudi Arabia for NEOM. We've been selected the technology, so that we will see a lot of movement in that sense. And I think it's going to be very important to be a pioneer. And when we discussed it a few weeks ago with the energy minister and the prime minister, we were saying Egypt has already been a pioneer. In the early 1950s, the project at the Aswan Dam was using hydropower to produce green hydrogen, and from green hydrogen, then green fertilizer at that time. So what a fantastic story that such a country has already more than 50 years ago been a pioneer here. And I think it's very important also in this new technology to start early, to investigate it very closely and be at the forefront of the first developments there. From a perspective of the electrolysis, I think we already see a quite mature technology, but there will be a lot of cost advantages in increasing to a large scale, so the scale-up factors. But coming from the electrolysis technology comes from us, also from the chlorine and caustic soda production. So a number of plants are already installed here in Germany and many across the world. So it's not new, and I think therefore it has been logic then also to go into this water electrolysis business, and that we look very much forward of driving this and finding the first opportunities here.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. It's like brilliant. Like the huge collaboration potential between Egypt and Germany, like it's really huge, and I think it's time to have this live now. But since we already addressed to have this green hydrogen deployment, we have to have kind of a policy. But the term green hydrogen policy is a little bit vague now, and we would like to discuss it more. Why do we need to have green hydrogen policies? What do you think, Mr. Noisel?
Thank you very much, Omar, that I'm allowed to participate in this format. I think Cairo Climate Talks are a well-established format with a nice history. And I'm looking forward to the physical events that will hopefully take place someday.
Yeah, we all are.
We all are actually, having been for so long in such a online only condition. Yeah, green hydrogen policy, as you said it, this is still a bit fuzzy or a bit vague. Of course, there are specific concrete policy plays in Germany, in Europe, but still those policies, I'd say, have to be built now with lots of more substantial details of regulation issues, of details, how to treat actually hydrogen. Now, every time I'm, let's say, confronted with hydrogen throughout the last 4 years, I always approach the topic from a perspective of development cooperation. And development cooperation, for example, in between Egypt and Germany is a strong partnership, also with history in the energy sector, actually, with GZ and KfW being heavily involved and having strong collaborations there. So this development partnership perspective is let's say, to account for principles also that contain, for example, sustainability. And last but not least, you mentioned it in the beginning, we are having this discussion on hydrogen mostly because of climate change. And to avoid climate change or to reduce its impacts, which can be seen already today, as you know, we said it before, in Germany, in Egypt, it's already arrived. In the US, you have record numbers of temperatures right now, which are extraordinary and totally for what they are actually used to. And partially, we're not prepared for that. So we have to adapt. And we also have to mitigate. We have to mitigate climate gases, emissions that are active in the atmosphere. So coming from this perspective of the overall goal, and this is, I'm speaking here for development cooperation for the program I'm working in, which is focusing on renewable energy, energy efficiency. From this perspective of emission reduction, of course, the hydrogen topic is unfortunately slightly more complicated than it seems to be. Now we are making, maybe coming to what Dr. Goldhammer very nicely summarized on the energy transition in Germany. Germany and Europe committed to reduce their emissions massively throughout the next decades and actually the few next years. And to reach those targets, in some sectors it's more clear, electrification is an option. We might increase energy efficiency so that we don't even have to produce the kilowatt hour of electricity because we're not using it. This is actually the logic of efficiency, energy efficiency. You first need to reduce actually what you do not have to consume. And then when you cannot avoid to consume energy, you produce it, if possible, in a renewable energy way. However, so there are some sectors in Germany where decarbonization and reduction of emissions is much more difficult and much more expensive also. For example, it was mentioned transport, definitely like marine transport, for example, airplanes. It takes decades to replace airplanes and also to develop the technologies that might replace them, actually fossil fuels. And we had that, of course, there are limitations for battery storages, like classical electrical battery storages. Furthermore, of course, in cement industry, in steel industry, there is massive need for reduction of emissions because the EU also committed and also each sector has their responsibility and their share of that reduction. So now, let's say the industry and also scientists have been searching for solutions. And one solution is definitely hydrogen, use of the gas hydrogen as an energy carrier, I'd say. We mostly, you said here now, energy source. Well, it is a source from the moment on you produced it. But let's maybe call it energy carrier because when it has to be produced, you also need another form of energy. So it's actually a conversion of energy more than like an energy source. And I mean, there are actually natural sources of hydrogen, but this is this is something for the future. They're only small resources. They might be difficult to, I think in Mali or so. So it's slightly difficult. So let's talk about the hydrogen that is produced artificially, synthetic hydrogen. And there, I think one core essential point coming from this development and climate change or climate protection perspective, of course, emission reduction perspective, we need to actually differentiate a bit in between hydrogen because we're speaking here now about green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is produced solely and 100% by renewable energy. So it's clean. There are no emissions with except maybe some arising from transport. For example, marine transport with ships might have higher emissions than producing, like taking some hydrogen, maybe 7–10% into an existing fossil gas pipeline network. That will reduce the costs. However, so there is green hydrogen as the sustainable option, but there are also other forms of hydrogen, which I have to mention here. So you can produce hydrogen out of electricity, but you can also produce hydrogen out of fossil gas. So therefore also we see large players in the gas sector and large companies heavily investing also into the hydrogen topic. So if you produce gas, hydrogen from, let's say, fossil gas, first of all, what you get is gray hydrogen. Of course, you need to know that if you have an energy conversion, let's say from fossil gas hydrogen, you lose first of all energy and create thereby emissions. That has to be known actually. It's the same if you produce it from electricity. First thing that happens, you lose electricity. So it means you increase somehow the emissions if they had happened by producing this electricity. So if you see it from fossil fuel, from fossil gas, you have gray hydrogen first, and then the idea is that there can be compensation. There can be CO2 equivalent compensation. It means that you, for example, already capture CO2 in, for example, in industrial processes, and then use, for example, carbon capture and storage or carbon capture utilization storage, meaning that you fill old gas caverns. For example, in Norway, we see recent projects almost being finalized to dump actually this CO2 in, for example, old gas caverns. Saudi Arabia is already doing that. So it's a theoretical balance sheet decarbonization, so to say. It is not the real decarbonization as when you use green energy, renewable energy, but still coming from this gray hydrogen, you compensate the CO2, you come to blue hydrogen. So this is the third color already arising. And there are many more other colors actually. For example, you can also produce hydrogen by electricity that has been produced by nuclear power, which is for Germany possibly not an option. We heard that Germany will get rid of nuclear fossil fuel because of what happened in Japan and of a political long-term strategy. However, so Germany needs, that is for sure, a lot of hydrogen in future. And Germany has seen actually this hydrogen and green hydrogen, but also blue hydrogen as a solution for the future. And the EU has more or less adopted that and also has very large plans for using and investing massively billions of dollars, of euros and pounds into hydrogen technology. And but there again, from development perspective, we need to focus actually on green hydrogen. And we should all be aware climate change is already happening now. So that means it's ongoing already. So we should definitely focus on solutions and options that come into action soon and not in 10 or 20 years. So you have to know that hydrogen, green hydrogen for now, is not yet compatible in the market by prices. It's too expensive. So we need to scale up. It's the economy of scale up technically, and also we need to scale up the projects to produce green hydrogen in industrial large scale. Then it will, after possibly many years, but with lots of also support, financial support by governments, for example, we may have the option that green hydrogen is put up to numbers that actually count. Because right now, green hydrogen, the amount of green hydrogen produced is so minimal that it doesn't count on the worldwide energy or consumption. So right now, it doesn't make any change concerning the climate change. There is not so much mitigation yet, but there is large potential for the future. Still, we should keep an eye also on actually electrification, because from what I mentioned as the principle of energy efficiency, the first option you do is you use the clean energy you have. And that would mean you produce renewable energy and you directly use it. And then you can use 100%. Electricity is a pure form of energy, which can, if the electricity network is well, be transported and used also in other places. It can be stored, of course, with some difficulties and high costs, where one option is then the green hydrogen. And so we need to focus on using that electricity first, and then we really have no other option There we should speak about potentially then converting electricity, potentially to hydrogen with some losses of electricity, then to methane, for example, with some losses of electricity, or actually of energy content from hydrogen to methane, for example. And then you can, and that's the absolute genius idea with hydrogen, you can convert it to almost every synthetic fuel. Unfortunately, you lose a lot of energy. So imagine, for example, you have, I don't know, you have 100 liters of water and you want to produce tea or lemonade, and it tastes nicer, you can sell it better and you can apply it better, but you only, maybe there are only like 20 to 40 liters left anymore that you have to deploy to your population. So this should be kept in mind. Hydrogen is like, up to now, an expensive and exclusive energy carrier. Still, hydrogen has lots of advantages. In chemical industry, it can be used very well. It can be mixed with fossil gas in the gas pipeline network. It is great actually because it's so pure. It has a slightly different burning temperature, for example, from fossil gas, but it can be used in many applications and is quite a promising gas. So we should all focus on green hydrogen. Thank you.
Awesome, Martin. Like, I love how it was very comprehensive to explain how the gray and the blue and like all the spectrum of hydrogen, and how this is not what we need to decarbonize, and like how would that be framed, and like the huge massive need for that, as well as all the energy efficiency dialogue that I think maybe we can elaborate and expand on this later today. So thank you so much. I think back to the collaboration point between Germany and Egypt, like discussing maybe on a deeper level the potential renewable energy side. We already addressed the PV and the wind potential in Egypt for the collaboration between Germany and Egypt, but maybe we can hear a deeper layer on this discussion from Mr. Beckers. What do you think?
Yes, well, the collaboration between Egypt and Germany, I mean, there has been within this German hydrogen strategy, Nationale Wasserstoffstrategie, now also passed by the German Parliament, a fund for H2 Global, because it's, of course, I think pretty obvious that all the hydrogen will not be able to be produced only within Germany. So also to foster that in adjacent countries. I think that is a perfect way of applying first projects, because as the previous speaker said, it's currently not feasible, because there has to be a bridging in the beginning through subsidies until really this technology has first of all reached its economies of scale, as well as really has gone through extreme cost improvement, as well as, of course, that the cost of CO2 worldwide will for sure in future increase, because I think worldwide everybody has understood that reaching the climate goals can only be if we also penalize CO2 emissions, and that CO2 costs extra. So that will touch many of the industries and change then many of the industries, because they will have to think early enough in their investments what will happen in 10, in 20 years from now if they would invest in the classical routes, maybe based on fossil fuels. So that is a big, I think that is the big driver there. I think the collaboration between Germany and Egypt has always been very strong. Of course, Germany is also looking at other North African countries, but I think with these industries that are already established in Egypt, and with, of course, politically, the political stability and the political ties that both countries have, Germany and Egypt, this is a perfect prerequisite. Then also, you know that we have in Germany are facing new elections coming up. I think many are expecting that that environmental improvement and maybe also green sort of prospects will have a larger share from whichever party. I'm definitely neutral on that, but I think we will see that, and this will again also promote this development. I'm very sure on this. So I think these are the really the very good prerequisites. I know that Egypt is looking very much on reducing within its economy the number of subsidies, because with the great developments that it has in many infrastructure projects. I mean, looking at here in Egypt, how much is being driven in infrastructure and industries. I think the economy is also has to look with the amount of subsidies to make it more viable on that part. But I think also the Egyptian government has seen that it will try to do everything to facilitate, to provide the regulatories. That will be very important, because to really provide certificate transmission rights with respect to green energy, these are not yet established. I think this has to be established in this country, as well as also the previous speakers have said in the European Union, and as also in Germany, this still to some extent will establish as well.
Thank you. Thank you. What do you think, Dr. Nahla, about the locations that can be good potential for this collaboration between Germany and Egypt and the renewable energy technologies? We already addressed this about the technology itself, but maybe some suggested locations. What do you think?
Well, locations were not announced yet by the government, but if you speak about green hydrogen, means electrolysis of seawater. So you are definitely, which I guess more suitable will be the Red Sea shore to be used for electrolysis. You need to have an infrastructure of many electrolyzers. You need to build these structures. I'm not sure if it could be also on the Mediterranean Sea, but I believe on the Red Sea, maybe because of the sun in the south, is much more suitable for PV, because if it's green hydrogen, it means that it's totally green, solely renewable. So you think about PV to be used as a source for energy to electrolyze water and separate hydrogen from oxygen. Or the wind shore, which we have some potentials, but maybe not yet as a project, as a big project yet. So maybe the government, maybe they know more, can speak about this point, where is exactly the location, but it should be near the seashore to make this plant of electrolyzers, which start the project from my own point of view.
So like all what we need, we need to be by water supply, and definitely speaking of our resources in Egypt, both Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea would be good potential locations to have all of the supply chain, like starting from the same place, and like the final product, the green hydrogen, would be onshore as well, and then transported, or we would talk later how would that be transported or stored. So that was from Egypt side, or the suggested locations for Egypt. But what do you think, Dr. Katharine, in Germany? What could be the suitable locations for green hydrogen production in Germany, as well as the technologies?
Well, that's a good question, because green hydrogen has a prerequisite, and that's investing in renewable energy, right? If we're talking green, as you've just explained. And the quest for renewable energy in Germany, as I said, has already been very impactful over the last few years. But as you can imagine, the hard years are yet to come, right? So what are we going to do about the next 50%? And that's only for the electricity part. It doesn't mean that, you know, augmenting this share means that we already have enough electricity for additional use. And putting up electrolyzers in Germany and wanting to produce green hydrogen will obviously add on to the electricity that we already need to generate using more wind and more solar PV for the electricity system. And that's a debate that is quite open right now, because the locations for the wind farms that are coming up and for the solar PV systems that we're going to see coming up over the next few years are heavily debated. And I'm of the optimistic group, so I can tell you that there's going to be enough space for that, and locations are going to be found. But I'm also skeptical about, let's say, producing an additional 10 or 20 or even 50% of renewable energy, for example, to decarbonize the transport sector, because all internal combustion engine cars are going to become electric, or because additionally we would like to produce green hydrogen. And this is why I am very confident that importing green hydrogen is going to play a big role. And we need to talk about what are potential import countries for Germany when it comes to the whole value, but also the whole cost chain of importing green hydrogen, right? Because you've already mentioned this, and there might be some time in the end to talk about this. So is the cost of electricity production? Is it the cost of the electrolyzer? Is it the cost of transport infrastructure or pipelines or tanks? Which of these components plays a role? And for example, if it's the cost of the pipeline and it scales with the length of the pipeline, then we might be looking at different countries and countries with a shorter distance to Germany than in some other cases. And if we find out that actually, shipping green hydrogen makes a lot of sense, then it makes a lot of sense to also look at across the ocean and across the Mediterranean Sea.
Thank you. Absolutely, it's the case for Germany. So, just to conclude what you said, that Germany is looking at the potential close locations that could be economically viable for green hydrogen production, and that would be kind of collaboration between Germany and the other countries. That's all about my PhD. I'm working on the hydrogen transport, so I'm super excited about this. Okay, thank you, Dr. Catherine. I would love to have some insights about the ongoing discussions about the green hydrogen policies, specifically in Germany, and maybe some comments about the ecological or environmental perspective. What do you think, Mr. Neutel?
Thank you. Yeah, that's, to my opinion, a crucial question. And it is one question, of course, that is heavily discussed. And there are so many different opinions on that also, and different experts with different data and different estimations, rule of thumb. So we have this is the largest discussion. So again, from my perspective, development cooperation, sustainability, climate protection is my business these days. So coming from that perspective, our major goal is to reduce emissions. And reducing emissions has to be done in a way that it's like a real emission reduction. The CO2 or CO2 equivalent, other gases that are climate active measured in CO2 equivalents, they really need to be reduced, and will not help us. And with us, I mean the whole planet. It will not help us if we, let's say, use mathematical tricks or maybe so on different balancing on, let's say, reducing CO2 on paper. This will not change the planet. So then we don't have to do it anyways. We can just keep going with the fossil fuels for the next 50 years. But unfortunately, changing to the real emission reduction costs a lot of money, but not necessary. It depends a bit, and it's ambitious. So it was mentioned before, Germany, if Germany and Europe would massively focus on using green hydrogen, then it's simple, it's impossible to produce all that hydrogen in Germany. It's simply not possible. The number we calculated it is not possible from the loss of electricity. Even if you use all the area in Germany and put it full with photovoltaic panels and wind power. There you have to know that in Germany, there are very active citizens that demonstrate against building, for example, wind farms. So you'd have a bureaucratic and difficult process. However, this hydrogen, it cannot all come from Germany if we use it massively in some of the large industrial sectors. If it's only for, let's say, small applications, it might be possible. So therefore, of course, the industry is searching for cost-efficient and usable solutions. And one is the mentioned blue hydrogen. The blue hydrogen, again, for explanation again, is produced out of fossil gas. This fossil gas could be given, I don't know, coming from Russia, for example, from Egypt, I don't know, from the world market. There is lots of gas on the world market. And that, in the same time, is an issue. The price for fossil gas is quite low. And it was last year recordly low. So if you produce hydrogen, then gray hydrogen first, and then you want to carbonize it by making it blue hydrogen, you have to have the right solutions. Carbon capture and storage is a technology that has been there for decades. It has a revival now, so to say, because for example, in the 90s, for example, in the USA, several large companies tried to use CCUS, carbon capture and storage, by using CO2 that was directly taken from, for example, coal power plants. And the idea was to actually decarbonize the coal power plant. And this is an interesting idea, of course, because for us, coal power is somehow dirty. Yeah, it doesn't create gaseous emissions. It creates small particles that can harm humans. However, so this technology is there, and it now has a revival. Me personally, to be honest, I'm sorry for that choice to say, also Rebecca, possibly, I'm not a great fan of CCS because it's the old-fashioned idea. We produce waste and we dump it. So we just get it out of our eyes and put it to the ground, and we hope that for the next 10,000 years not come up again. To my opinion, we should really try everything, just avoid the emissions and not to find solutions on dumping the emissions. It's the same with waste. So if we produce hazardous waste, we can just dump it somewhere. For example, for nuclear power plants, we can just dump it anywhere, and we didn't find a solution in Germany yet for that. Or we just don't produce it. We don't produce it. And then we have that we don't have to search for alternatives. However, CCS is, of course, a real option there. Then there is the air capturing. Direct air capturing is using is energy intensive usage. The idea is that you use more energy to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. Also there, it takes a lot of energy, and energy has this electricity has to be produced from renewable energies, and so you actually increase the amount of energy that you need. So, to my opinion, coming again with this efficient logic, if you really try to avoid emissions, that should be the first priority. So there are sectors where that is not possible, or let's say limited, because the processes are already, chemical or industrial processes are already sometimes very efficient, so there's no space anymore for reduction. Hydrogen might be the only option. Then, so coming back to, let's say, environmental perspective, if green hydrogen is not yet available in the amount scale that's needed for industry, you will possibly have to move to other forms of hydrogen. For example, this could be blue hydrogen. What is important and will be very interesting is what Germany, Europe will come up with regulation, and then actually on specific regulation and assumptions and rules can be counted as a decarbonized hydrogen. What framework conditions have to be done, have to be applied to produce blue hydrogen, that really blue hydrogen and CO2 reduced. That will be very important. And also once Europe and Germany has set rules for that, which might happen end of this year, maybe next year, inshallah, I'm not sure. But then also other countries, such as Egypt, will possibly then actually focus on these framework conditions and then possibly adapt to what is then by definition blue hydrogen, because up to now, no one knows, because it's not yet clear. There is no global CO2 marketplace yet. There is no global CO2 certificate. Mr. Beckett said it absolutely correctly. We need price for CO2, and the price will increase in future. I think you said that, and this is, of course, we need planning security. The industry needs planning security so that they can change their processes, adapt to the situations and requirements that will come up. So it will be very interesting what kind of rules and regulations will come up for defining gray, blue, green hydrogen, purple hydrogen, whatever it is. And there I think it's important to take the full picture, the full balance. That would include actually the water. Is the water produced from seawater? I mean, we all know we have a water issue here, a serious one. So, but hydrogen production uses a lot of water. So we have to produce it possibly from desalination, but this desalination process has to be again driven by renewable energy. Otherwise we have further emissions that we need to compensate. And this costs extra. Still the water costs, I think, are rather low compared to other costs there. So we need to be just honest from the balancing sheet. Also, for example, for transport, if you transport with a ship, a large ship, there will be losses of hydrogen because it's slightly difficult to store hydrogen. You need to cool it down to very low temperatures. If you store it in a simple tank, that costs energy again, and you have like permanent small losses. The longer the transport way, the less will arrive at the destination harbor. So that is another option that needs to be included in then really calculating now from an engineering perspective, calculating green or blue hydrogen. And this is a core point, because if there it will be, let's say, fuzzy, and maybe certificates are, we have too many certificates. We have seen it in the European CO2 credit point system. We have seen it in other countries. It's not accurate at that point. Then we will have simply greenwashing, and then there will be no real emission reduction, and then we don't do anything for climate protection, climate change mitigation. Exactly. So we have to be honest there, actually, and look very much in detail to receive right savings, real savings.
I get the argument of the blue hydrogen. Like, no offense to the blue hydrogen folks anyway, like still in the energy mix, but I get the whole argument, and that's all about it. Like to discuss why is this, why is that, and what would that lead us to. But back to the hydrogen transport and back to the collaboration between Egypt and Germany, like all the ongoing discussions are going on a potential route for this transport in an ammonia form. But why ammonia, and what's ammonia, and how this is produced, and if there is a potential for integrating the cement industry? What do you think, Mr. Beckers?
Yes, that's a good point, because I was also thinking currently the project that we are engaged with worldwide are all green ammonia projects currently. We are, the NEOM project in Saudi Arabia is a green ammonia project at the end. Just to explain again, to make it also again simple to understand, you produce through renewable energy by water electrolysis hydrogen, and for ammonia, which is NH3, you need nitrogen. So you take an air separation plant that takes the nitrogen out of the air. By that chance, you also get oxygen. And that oxygen can also then be integrated, maybe what we call the so-called sector coupling. You can integrate it into other plants, like the cement industry is a very energy intensive industry as well, and you use the oxygen there for heat production. So green ammonia is, of course, for Egypt a perfect product, because the ammonia industry is an established industry. You have a number of ammonia plants already established. What Egypt doesn't have, it doesn't have a hydrogen network. Germany, of course, and Europe has hydrogen networks. What is here available is, of course, a natural gas network. So everybody was talking about also maybe introducing hydrogen into the natural gas network. But as a transport vector, how we call it, seeing then green ammonia either as an energy carrier or also as just a molecule for further processing. Ammonia is an established product. The logistic chains are available. You have all the hubs already in Egypt, like in Abu Qir on the north coast, or in Ain Sukna down at the Red Sea, where you could export liquid ammonia. Has, of course, many advantages towards hydrogen, because hydrogen you have to cool down extremely, and you have losses. It is already, of course, also established as a for transport, but not in the scale. It only currently not to the amount that you would need worldwide. So there are a lot of developments. I mean, the subject is definitely, as you said, it's energy mixes. So we will see all the different mixes in future. You will see, you will most probably see green ammonia as a very strong in the beginning. We see it currently in a project also in Canada. We see it in the US as a project, beside the big 2.2 gigawatt project at NEOM, Saudi Arabia. But then in future, you would also see, when subsidies arise, then of course the route towards green methanol, green fuels, for instance, for within the whole refinery chains. But that is, at the moment, it's lacking the subsidies, it's lacking also maybe this transition that the refinery industry needs there in future. So maybe they go via this blue route, blue hydrogen route, because of course, if you have a refinery, you could also use the carbon, the CO2 for enhanced oil production. You know, you can put the CO2 into your oil wells to enhance the oil production in future. But I'm definitely also with Mr. Neusel. Honestly, I'm not also fond of putting the carbon into the ground, as I'm not fond of putting nuclear waste into the ground and leave it for future generations. Those problems. Therefore, I see much more opportunities in the sector where you would really use the infrastructure which is there right now, then maybe produce green ammonia, transport it to Germany. There's a big project in Wilhelmshaven on the north coast that it is being investigated by Uniper, also a big energy company that would then decompose the ammonia there and produce and put the hydrogen back into the network. So I think these are the developments which we most probably will see in the first few years, because it needs this industry needs extremely fast reaction in the beginning, and then you cannot wait for all these maybe other developments to immediately make it completely green. As for instance, Martin also mentioned the issue of water desalination. I think in the beginning you will probably see the conventional route of water desalination for producing the water, but then in future it will be important then to have the complete chain also green, to also produce the desalination of water, and then also green from that point of view. So a lot to think of in the various governments to make it really work. I think there have been some first steps done to give the industry this this impact and to start into it. We are quite, I would say, enthusiastic, although we of course know as a company that this business is still to be grown. There will be also the conventional businesses for some time.
Thank you, Mr. Andreas. Absolutely, I like how you brought all the perspectives of the technology and how it's not like a one-shot decision. Like it's very broad, and like a lot of inputs are there to have this deployed. However, back to the collaboration ongoing now between Germany and Egypt. What do you think about the scale, like the current scale of the collaboration or the projected future scale? You're on
Well,
mute.
yeah, I'm muted already. It took me a second. Sorry.
No worries.
Well, honestly, I believe it depends. Of course, the NEOM project is huge, of course, and it's still in the development phase. We are currently sort of it's progressing now, also in investing more into the engineering and go to more details now. But it's of course a long way still. Other projects which are of a smaller size, we see already they are already now being realized. We are talking about 88 megawatts in Canada. We're talking about 2-digit megawatts in the US. I always said you need 120 megawatts to produce 300 metric tons per day of ammonia. That's sort of the rule of thumb. The bigger you get into a large-scale ammonia plant, you know, today we're talking global scale big ammonia plants, 3,000 and higher metric tons per day. Then you're of course really tackling these economies of scale. But it depends if this is really, because especially with what I said in the beginning, it's not feasible. So it depends very much on the subsidies that you can provide. Therefore, I see more the medium scale size to make sort of the first move, or being the pioneer there to make a project fly. That's at least. I've also heard now by some of the ministers that they are also thinking in Egypt bigger. To that extent, of course, thinking big means definitely you will have these economies of scale included, but then the development until you really have a project that is feasible together with the subsidies takes longer. So I think we will try to use all the perspectives as well as you know, private investors, public investors, maybe private-public partnerships, all are at stake, and to make this transition work. So we will see what will happen. We will also learn a lot on the way. I'm pretty sure there's a lot to learn on the details on the way.
Yeah, it's always the case that like you learn where when you're going, and like you can't see the end of the story, and like the learning curve is something very important in such vibrant projects. Thank you, Mr. Andreas. I think maybe one last point to discuss is about having a decentralized several plants in Egypt. Maybe Dr. Nahla, can you discuss a bit about the potential of having a decentralized plant for green hydrogen production, and maybe give some words about how would that work, or the individual components of such a decentralized plant?
Oh yes, I think it's an important, first of all, to start up. So we need to start up, and we start up big. So we can know where we are going. We can start in different places. So you need to choose on different aspects. You need to choose a place for a very good renewable energy source, like the hot area for the PV solar panels. Then you need to look for also a seashore at this point. So that's why it looks like the Gulf. The Suez Gulf area and the Red Sea shore would be a potential point. Another point, if you look for the wind also, which is not mentioned, or maybe in the future it needs to be mentioned, because there are very potential studies about the wind shore in Egypt. All over the Red Sea line. So this Red Sea line is the longest line in Egypt. So it needs to be used at that point. I'm not sure if we can use on land green hydrogen, because you need the source of water on that point, and you can't use. We already having deficiency in the water, in the Nile water, and some other issues. So we can't really, I don't think that we can go through this point. But what about also the Mediterranean Sea? And maybe the Mediterranean Sea is nearer to Europe. And if we look from the economical point of view, it would be maybe the feasibility studies will show up with where places would be to make a local places for the green hydrogen. If we speak only about green hydrogen, then we need really a place for a shore, and we need also to look for a place for solar or for wind. I think those are the potentials of Egypt, and I think maybe I'm a little bit more optimistic about the point that by time I know that it costs nowadays high, the green hydrogen. That's why the market is still weak, or maybe there is not yet an established market for green hydrogen. But by time we learn that technologies can be developed and costs reduced. So first to start up and then look for scientists to work on these points and to look for the reduction of these costs. Another point that you need to penalize the carbon dioxide emissions in Egypt, but you need first to give them the substitution for it. So you need to encourage them to go to renewable energy sources, to electrification, to electrifying the sources of energy. So that's why we need to start big, to have this point for the already established investments in Egypt.
Yeah, I totally agree with all your points, Dr. Nahla, and I agree with the roadmap, so to say, that you suggested to go. I'm really sorry that the panel discussion came to an end, and the time is not sufficient. I know that it's a heated up topic, and we would talk for ages. But unfortunately, our time is over, and I think maybe we can have some time to answer some of the audience questions. So I think I would start with this question in regards of the lack of existing hydrogen networks in Egypt. In the light of the abundant natural gas discoveries in Egypt, how optimistic are we in hoping for transformation from natural gas to green hydrogen? And I was just wondering if there is a cutoff to water salinity for the water used to produce green hydrogen. So there are two questions. Maybe I can start now addressing this question to Dr. Catherine. What do you think of transforming in general the natural gas pipelines into green hydrogen pipelines?
It makes it tough, right? Because obviously if natural gas is abundant and cheap, and there isn't a carbon price to change the business case for this, the switch to hydrogen, where would it come from, right? So it's actually something that Germany is discussing with other international partners as well. For example, Russia is today the country that Germany is importing most natural gas from. For Russia, the switch to green hydrogen would be crazy. The switch to blue hydrogen would be interesting as an example, right? Because we've already discussed you could, produce blue hydrogen in some ways from the natural gas resources you have. And I think this is the reason why a part of the discussion in Germany also would like to discuss these more realistic options for the next few years. And if Egypt is a country with abundant natural gas resources, I understand the case for making use of these assets as well. So they cannot be turned into green hydrogen, but maybe into other forms of hydrogen that could be used in the beginning of this transition, but they wouldn't be green. They could be gray or blue or something else.
You mean I think maybe the question was of transforming them maybe in the form of transportation, like using the existing network of the natural gas to have green hydrogen in the network itself.
Right. Well, definitely wherever you already have infrastructure in place would be a great start. It's also the reason why I mentioned natural gas pipelines in Europe being used for distributing green hydrogen, just because whenever a network already exists, this would be the lowest cost option for the infrastructure you need in the future. Building a new pipeline is usually out of the question when it comes to a cost comparison.
Fair enough. So this being answered now, The second part of the question would be they cut off the water salinity for the water used to produce green hydrogen. What do you think, Mr. Andreas?
Yes, well, you need a very pure water. Therefore, I've seen there some first, I would say, startups using even salt water, but in a very, very early stage. Extremely difficult for me to judge if this will be at the end successful to get it into the commercial scale. Currently, we really need high purity water to make the electrolysis efficient. And of course, with respect to corrosion, we were talking about the corrosion that is important. So that's of course a wonderful idea. We will see how much there might be developments which I cannot foresee all by myself. Maybe they are to be developed, but currently it looks as if we really need desalinated water there and very pure water in all of the technologies that they're starting from. So therefore, we have to look at technologies that then also have that part green provided by renewable energy to make the whole chain efficient with respect to green. Of course, cost-wise, more expensive. That we have to just admit right now. So yeah, but that's unfortunately that's the truth.
No, that's fair. Thank you. Yeah, this is a major part of my PhD as well. So like I'm familiar with that. But thank you for addressing this to the audience as well. One more question is it's basically a political one, so to say. So I think Mr. Neusser will be interested to answer this. To my knowledge, it's a no, but I would love to have some insights from you. Has Egypt announced the policy for strategy for green hydrogen?
Well, I am not speaking on behalf of the Egyptian government.
No, like just see from your perspective.
But what I can tell you, and I would actually pass it forward that to the Egyptian stakeholders here. What I know is that the Egyptian government is very aware of the German and European hydrogen strategy and Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy, for example, our direct political project partner also, that supports us really well in implementation. And for example, ministries that we do not yet work with as within my project. Of course, other projects are, for example, Ministry of Petroleum. I'm sure they're also very aware of it. Let's say to my knowledge, this is under development and more or less has been announced also, but it's the same as in Germany or Europe. It has to be filled with more substantial details. You cannot come with the golden idea from the first day. And since we are all as experts here discussing this idea, it's obvious that there needs to be lots of development and clarification and also research, of course, for accessing this topic. But I suggest you ask the real responsible decision makers.
Dr.
It might be a yes. It might be a yes.
Dr. Nahla, what do you think?
Well, I have to go to the official announcements. They are still mentioning that there are studies, strategies are going on, and there is no real given like a call in appointment or like sharp plan for how this will go on. And the sharp plan is not mentioned yet, so I can't mention it if the government already didn't mention it yet. So I think there's still more deep studies and expertise are involved in, and the international collaboration, and this all needs more time. It needs more time to say this will go in this plan, on this shore, in this location. We are going to do like an infrastructure in this size and so on. I think once they really feel serious about it, and that is the one plan will go on, they will mention it.
Thank you, Dr. Nahla. Fair enough. Okay, so like, but it's always good to let people know that it's not that straightforward, and like a lot of perspectives are ongoing, and like you can't say from tomorrow this is going to be the case. So thank you for bringing this. I'm afraid that we're running out of time and like we already exceeded 7 p.m. So very sadly, I would have to wrap this up. At the end of this overwhelming event, I would really like to thank this outstanding panelists for such an interesting dialogue they managed to deliver. Thank you so much. Thanks for freeing up some time for us in your very busy schedules. Thank you to our audience for your curiosity and interest in this hot topic. That is my greatest passion and my all-time focus at the moment, so I know I might sound a bit biased. I hope some of today's excitement about green hydrogen is transmitted to the audience as well. I personally wish to see green hydrogen leading the energy mix by tomorrow maximum. Thank you to our partners and the journalists who always report so kindly on our efforts and are hence an integral part of our effort to support the dialogue and raise awareness. Last but not least, I would like to highlight our next round of CCT 77, which is titled The Heat is On, Climate Change and Heat. It will take place on July the 27th, again during a regular slot at 5:30 Cairo's time, in Germany's time as well, and still via Zoom. We will tackle the topic from both a technical and a society perspective. So talking about how heat affects humans and our planet and how innovative cooling systems can help mitigate heat. You can follow us on Facebook or sign up for our newsletter to get the invitation. Thank you all for your time and attention. We will send you the recording and report in the next days, and we will see you very soon. Thank you so much and good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Omar. Has been
Thank
a
you,
pleasure.
everybody.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
My
goodbye.
pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to meet you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Omar, very much. And Lily, thank you so much for this arrangement.
Thank you, everybody.
so much. Thank you so much.